It has been observed that there are several sampling methods that researchers can utilize while undertaking research. The question that comes into mind is, what is it that should guide us when deciding on the type of sampling method to employ in our research? There are two simple guidelines. One is based on the type of study that we wish to undertake. Then the other one is based on the availability of data, rather the availability of sample or respondents, potential respondents. This is what we call approaches to sampling methods. So how do we approach the sampling that we wish to undertake? There are two broader approaches, and this is based on the type of study that we wish to undertake. We have what we call a single study method, and then we have what we call the mixed study method. What are they? When we talk of a single study method, we mean that the study is either quantitative in nature or qualitative in nature. When we say that a study is quantitative in nature, what that implies is that the kind of data or information that we seek to gather and for which we use to answer our research objectives is information that can be quantified, information that can be recorded in numbers. These numbers could be percentages or they could be frequencies, or information that can be analyzed using inferential techniques. That is quantitative, so that when we report our findings in terms of numbers, in terms of numericals, that is what we mean by quantitative study. But study can also be qualitative. A study is qualitative when the focus of that study is to collect information that the researcher then uses to describe, to enumerate, to explain, and so on and so forth. In other words, the kind of information obtained is not reported in numerical numbers, but rather in a descriptive form, using words, using photographs, using what is observed, or using narrations. That case, therefore, such information is different from the one that is obtained through the use of quantitative methods. When we come to what we call mixed study method, we imply a type of study that seeks to collect both quantitative and qualitative data. In other words, such a study seeks to report some of its findings in numericals, such as frequencies and percentages. But at the same time, other aspects of the study it seeks to report in a narrative, in a descriptive nature, so that there's a component of the study findings that is reported in numericals. There's also a component of the study's findings that is reported in a descriptive or a narrative manner. Having given a distinction between quantitative and qualitative in terms of what the researcher seeks to present as its findings, we now want to ask ourselves, which of the many sampling methods that are available are suitable for which type of study? If a researcher seeks to undertake a quantitative study, it is advisable that such a researcher uses probability sampling methods. Why? Because to enable the researcher report information quantitatively, the researcher is expected to give each potential respondent an equal chance of being heard, and therefore their opinion should constitute the resultant findings of the study. There are several probability sampling methods that are available to the researcher. On the other hand, if a researcher seeks to undertake a qualitative study, it is then advisable for the researcher to use non-probability sampling methods. This is because the researcher is expected to focus on a few cases of the possible study respondents and then engage them deeply and comprehensively so that the information that is obtained can vividly describe, enumerate the feelings, the attitudes, and the emotions of the respondents with regard to the issues that the researcher had sought out to study. Therefore, probability sampling methods become the most appropriate for qualitative studies. Now, when we come to mixed method, it is advisable for the researcher to employ both probability and non-probability sampling methods. This is because aspects of the study that seeks to generate quantitative information and therefore quantitative findings are better obtained using probability sampling methods. At the same time, aspects of the study that seeks to generate qualitative findings are also better obtained through the use of non-probability sampling methods. That is why mixed studies requires researchers to employ both probability and non-probability sampling methods. So this is a simple guide or approach that researchers can employ when they are seeking to decide on which type of sampling method is most appropriate for their study. Thank you.